Jesuit Pope Francis I. The new Pope Francis I is a Jesuit. This of course doesn't seem too important, but once you see their oaths and how they operate, the average English-speaking person may be a little bit more disturbed. The British people should know how politically dangerous and despicable these men are. They hate the Protestant Anglo-Saxon race. When the Catholic Church is in trouble anywhere, these are the men it calls on. The Jesuits. Hi, I'm Barry J. Thornton. I've been a student of history, current events and the Bible for nearly 50 years now. I have never seen so much change, wars plus so many natural, national, human and other disasters. In Matthew 24, these are all listed as usual. When they become intense, then you know the end is near. One of the signs given is the publishing of the Bible. And the biblical gospel worldwide is another sign of the end time. There are now over 8 billion Bibles worldwide, with over 100 billion published just last year alone. Add this the internet downloads of the Bible and you get a truly phenomenal number. I know many people who've got 6 or 7 Bibles downloaded on their smartphones. There's another sign that I haven't listed here, but I will list right now, and that is that when these events occur, they will be seen worldwide, and that is exactly what you can see. From television to every smartphone can pick anything up on the net. This is a picture of Francis I. He's a very charming man, but you know, once you read their oath of Jesuits, and quite frankly it's a pretty horrible oath, you will see what they've done down the ages, and I'll go into this a little bit later on. Francis I, the first Jesuit Pope. There's a good reason why there has never been a Jesuit Pope previously. They have been likened to the stormtroopers of the Catholic Church. If the Church wants something sorted out or to turn back a threat of any sort, these are the men this militant church, as it calls itself, calls on. Francis I is the last Pope to be Peter the Roman. How is this possible? Because this, of course, is the big controversy because of the many prophecies dealing with these popes, going on for 112 popes. And the last number have been amazingly accurate. So when the prophecy mentioned Peter the Roman, and he took the name Francis of Assisi, and he didn't have any names to do with Peter, everybody thought, well, you know, this is obviously that prophecy was wrong. Well, in actual fact, it isn't, because St. Francis of Assisi, Italian San Francisco d'Assisi, was baptized Giovanni, born Francisco di Pietro di Bernardone. Excuse my pronunciation of Italian. St. Francis of Assisi baptismal name was Pietro or Peter. He went on to a pilgrimage to Rome, where he changed his whole life. Actually, he started to change his whole life, and gave up his family fortune, to which he was an heir. And at that point, he decided to become part of the very poor, and became an inspiration to Romans by this. And so it was in Rome that he became this different person from what he'd been all his life as a young tearaway, part of a very, very wealthy family. By adopting the name Francis I, the first part of the prophecy of the last Pope has been filled. Pope Innocent's dream about St. Francis supporting the Church as today. You see, look at that. You can see there that there's St. Francis on the right-hand side asleep with his watchers and helpers. And this is the dream he's got on the left-hand side with a tilting church. And there's St. Francis helping hold it up. So it was a dream which actually, strange enough, is being fulfilled today, because we all know the Catholic Church is in serious trouble. And as it would so happen, a man who took the name of St. Francis, or Francis the First, after the name of Assisi, which he admits, is the hope of the Catholic Church to sort out its problems. The Jesuits' relations with many countries were really bad. The Jesuits, in their pursuit of militant success for the Catholic Church, became persona non grata in many countries. It became so bad that there was talk of banning the Catholic Church, because when they banned the Jesuits, it didn't mean to say they stayed out the country. So the Pope signed a bull limiting their actions. By doing so, he acknowledged his own life was threatened, which it was. He passed away. They didn't disappear, they literally went underground. Very powerful, very dedicated people, very intelligent. Ignatius of Loyola receiving a papal bull. This is a picture of the man who in actual fact established the Jesuits, receiving his papal bull of papers to operate from the Pope. The appointment of Francis I should be seen as an act of desperation by the Catholic Church, because it has falling revenues and even faster falling attendance. Further, the Catholic Church is locked in a struggle with Islam. The dream of Pope Innocent III of St. Francis of Assisi supporting the tilting church has come true. The appointment of Francis I is the fulfillment of that dream, but whether he can save the Catholic Church is doubtful. Yahweh, the mighty one in the Bible, in Revelation, as mentioned, as for Babylon, has called the end of this church age, because the kingdom of Yahweh is about to be established. And the church age has failed miserably in teaching anybody anything, quite frankly. Only those people who've taken up and educated themselves about the Bible have virtually got any knowledge. Clearly this Pope knows what he is about and plays his part in humility very well, but he seems to not know the outcome of his future actions. Ex-Pope Benedict is in the background. The last Pope Benedict is a scholar who headed up what was known as the Inquisition, that directly over the ages was responsible for the deaths of 100 million people since its establishment. Bible scholars were said to be heretics. Heretics were not pagans. They were highly educated men and women who studied the Bible. Many people suppose a heretic means an unbeliever. Nothing could be further from the truth. As far as that church is concerned, I am a heretic, worthy of death, because I study and write on the Bible, tying it up with history and current events, plus reveal its science and history, to give it a credibility that it doesn't need from me or anybody, because it has it. You need to see the Jesuit oath taken by this Pope, because he's a Jesuit. Here's the sick Jesuit oath that all Jesuits are required to take. I'll read it for you. I do further promise and declare that I will, when opportunity presents, make and wage relentless war, secretly and openly, against all heretics, Protestants and Masons, as I am directed to do, to extirpate them from the face of the whole earth, and that I will spare neither age, sex, nor condition, and that will hang, burn, waste, boil, flay, strangle, and bury alive these infamous heretics, rip up the stomachs and wombs of their women, and crush their infants' heads against the walls in order to annihilate their execrable race, that when the same cannot be done openly, I will secretly use the poisonous cup, the strangulation cord, the steel of the poniard, or the leaden bullet, regardless of the honour, rank, dignity, or authority of persons, whatever may be their condition in life, either public or private, as I at any time may be directed to do by any agents of the Pope or Superior of the Brotherhood of the Holy Father of the Society of Jesus. In confirmation of which I hereby dedicate my life, soul, and all corporal powers, and with the dagger which I now receive, I'll subscribe my name written in my blood in testimony thereof, and should I prove false, or weakened in my determination, May, may my brethren and my fellow soldiers of the militia of the Pope cut off my hands and my feet and my throat from ear to ear, my belly be opened and sulphur burned therein, with all the punishment that can be inflicted upon me on the earth, and my soul shall be tortured by demons in eternal hell fire forever. That I will in voting always vote for a Knight of Columbus in preference to a Protestant, especially a Mason, and that I will leave my party to do so to do. That if two Catholics are on the ticket, I will satisfy myself which is the better supporter of the Mother Church and vote accordingly. That I will not deal with or employ a Protestant if in my power to deal with or employ a Catholic. That I will place Catholic girls in Protestant families, that a weekly report may be made of the inner movements of the heretics. That I will provide myself with arms and ammunition, that I may be in readiness when the word is passed, or I am commanded to defend the Church, either as an individual or with the militia of the Pope. As you can see, it isn't really a piece of poetry. It's something that this Pope probably took 20 or 30 years ago, which meant that he probably took it when, I don't know, if he is what's he, 70 something now, that means he probably took it about 40 years ago when he was 30. So that 40 years ago was 1970s. So this is, you say, well, that's ancient stuff. Well, there it is. Now, Britain has a particular problem in the South Atlantic called the Falkland Islands. And of course Mrs. Kirchner and those are all Catholic. Can we expect support from them? The Bible indicates no. There's a prophecy about that. Flat Earth. When the Pope forced the flat Earth theory on Europe after Galileo confirmed Copernicus's theory, many supposed it was because he found it in the Bible. Nothing could be more untrue. The Bible in the Hebrew uses the word sphere and circle. It was a political statement. The barons and lords did not want their serfs walking off if the earth was round, because while it was flat they knew they could fall off the edge. So they forced him to imprison Galileo under house arrest, and also forced him to recant, otherwise he'd lose his life. That is why the flat earth was accepted. People were fearful of falling off, and the barons and lords wanted them to believe that. As a consequence, many still think the Bible says the earth is flat. It doesn't say that. It's actual misinformation by the Pope. So why did they prevent Europe from reading the Bible? If we return to the first Pope, Constantine, the pagan Roman emperor, who till his deathbed worshipped the pagan god Mithra, when he converted to Christianity at the very last moment before his death. There's no chance of tying up the Bible with the Catholic belief. I can't think of any one thing they do that fits the biblical belief and teachings. The Quattrocesium controversy. What was the Quattrocesium controversy? Polycarp, a bishop and a descendant of John, the last disciple in the Bible who lived and probably wrote the Revelation after it being given to him via Yahweh, who gave it to his son, who approved of it as well, and then it was passed on to John by an angel who all he had to do was write it down, very much like any shorthand typist. That's all he had to do. The Polycarp went before the Pope to point out that the Passover was held on the 14th of Aviv, as the Hebrew calendar every year. Pope Anicetus insisted on applying it to the Easter Sunday in the pagan tradition as it still is today, and that's from the Catholic Encyclopedia. Those that knew the fraud died. Students of the Bible, knowing these things, so were in opposition to what the Pope and Cardinals were doing, hence the initiation of the murderous Inquisition. And you see the attitude of the Jesuits to these people. There was just no chance for them. Catholic Church confirms that the Saturday is the biblical Sabbath. In the Catholic book Faith of Our Fathers, plus many other Catholic books, the Catholic Church brags and acknowledges that you can study the Bible from cover to cover and find no authority for Sunday worship. The Sabbath of the Bible is the only day. Yet they called those who practiced and were obedient to the biblical laws heretics and burned them at the stake. Some of the persecuted, the Lollards, which is a big group, the Albigenses and the Huguenots, and quite a lot of others, to name but a few, groups were murdered in whole towns and cities wiped out when the Catholic troops or the secular authorities' troops at the direction of the Church descended on them and killed everyone. Cardinal Richelieu, known as the Grey Eminence, tricked a weak-minded French king into signing away the rights of the Protestant Huguenots and the free cities. The troops suddenly arrived and tried to kill everybody, which then a few escaped, and that is how South Africa today has wine. The fruitful result. Today, because of Cardinal Richelieu's murderous treachery, South Africa has excellent wines. When some of the Huguenots fled, they took vines and their knowledge with them. We should not forget the price so many paid to get out of the clutches of the Catholic Church. Some fled to America, as you know. That's how America came about. According to historians, 100 million died over the period of time the Catholic Church has been in power. This terrible toll was exceeded by the Muslim toll of over 220 million, estimated by other historians over 1400 years of Muslim rule. And it's still going on, as we know. Henry VIII and his wives, monster that he was, he took us out of the clutches of the Roman Inquisition, for which we should be ever thankful to this man. His daughter Elizabeth I turned back the Catholic tide by defeating the superpower of the day, Catholic Spain, where the Inquisition and the Jesuits had full reign. Surely we do not want this to return. The Catholic Church never has, nor ever will follow the Bible. Emperor Constantine made sure that every pagan religion was represented within the rituals of the Catholic Church. It is why the Catholics started with 10,000 saints. These were the ancient gods of the empire, such as the god of the valley, the rivers, the fields, the mountains, the sky, the weather, all represented to make up the faithful happy. Pagan holy days, why observe them if everything is done away? You know, this is an interesting point. If it be Lent, Easter, or Christmas, not one of them were observed by the apostles or the Messiah. In Jeremiah 10, the Christmas tree was warned against. It was condemned. So are the cakes of the hot cross buns of the Queen of Heaven, condemned in the Bible, which of course is Easter, because that was to the goddess Ishtar. When those puffed up cakes are being consumed, it is the feast of unleavened bread. We are supposed to be partaking of the symbol set up by the Messiah just prior to his crucifixion and continued on by the disciples to 100 years later, and then Polycarp in 325 AD went and told them that they're supposed to be observing that as well. So it was never done away, but that was the misinformation that was put out by the Church, and that is what all the Protestant churches, like Church of England, accept today and observe Sunday, etc., even although the Catholic Church has acknowledged the fact that Saturday is the day. Pray and expect an answer, but pray correctly to the right Heavenly Father using the correct names. There is a lot more. There are a few things that Bible students and the heretics were burned at the stakes fought against. I observe these feasts of Yahweh. When I pray, I expect a reply, and usually have one later on or by the very next morning. I had another example just the other day, where I was asked something by somebody, and I didn't really have the answer, and sure enough, the very next morning I walked into the kitchen and there was my son-in-law, and I was talking to him. He said, "Oh, by the way, I've been studying this." And I said, "Oh gosh, that's amazing. I was going to have to start studying that myself." And he gave me the answer I was looking for. That sounds weak, but I'm talking about health things, etc. as well. 15 years ago, after extensive tests taking a month or two, doctors told me my heart problem was so great that I would be dead in 6 months. Today, 15 years later, there's no trace of a problem, and I refuse to take any of their medication. Yahweh healed me. I also had a hernia that was so serious that they wouldn't do keyhole surgery for me, and they, because they have to put a net in, they said it was just too big. But I insisted on keyhole, and they said, "Okay, we'll do the keyhole surgery, but if we can't do the net, then we're going to have to cut you open. Which is, I never had that operation because Yahweh healed me. I still haven't had that operation. All my friends had that operation because they got hernias. I never had it at 70. The coming conflict. Within the next year or so, everyone is going to need help. Few generals and political analysts discount the fact that there will not be a war that will quickly become a nuclear conflict starting in the Middle East. This war will quickly become international. Those that sneer at this and will be annoyed to discover that their attitude was prophesied. Others will find it useless to turn to the Pope and Vatican because it will not be there. Even they expect that. The Bible confirms, and so does the Catholic Church, that the prophecies confirming the city of the Seven Hills, Rome, where the Vatican is, also referred to as Babylon the Great, in the Bible will be destroyed. Get on your knees now and forget about popes, cardinals, priests, ministers, etc. Pray directly to your Saviour, which is what he went through that trauma for, and then he is the intercessor to Yahweh and help save you and your family from what is coming on the world. He is our ark. As Noah had the ark, Yeshua is the ark, and he promises that nothing will happen to us, provided we believe not only in him, but apply the rules and laws of the Bible and observe his feast days. This particular tribulation coming on is going to wipe out 2/3 or more of the population of the planet. Try and make sure you are not one of those and your family is not one of those that get wiped out.